Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. Just to let you know, I've got a tactical plan for this podcast. So for the first half of the show, I'm not going to do anything at all. Yeah, you weren't expecting that, were you? That's the genius of the plan, you see. I'm operating on a different level from every other podcaster out there. You see, I'm not playing 4D chess. I'm playing like 8D chess. I'm having a game of Scrabble at the same time because I'm taking a macro-holistic, synergistic disruptor energy into this show. It's a game changer. All the other podcasters will be like, yeah, we were doing stuff in the first half of our shows, and this guy, he's come along and he's just leveraging the drill downs and pivoting to a cultural whiteboard. And that's how you win things, my friends. That's how you win things, by doing nothing for the first half. Pretty sure that's how you win things. Let me just check the football results from last night. Boom, boom, boom. Oh. I think I might have got this one wrong. Maybe if you're in a situation where, I don't know, let's say you need to score a goal in a cup tie, which you're losing from the first leg, you should try and score a goal rather than do absolutely nothing. I'm now having to somewhat rethink my presentation to all the guys at the CEO lunch, Weberpalooza. But look, like me, you might have been mistaken for thinking that simply not trying to score a goal in a game in which you need to score a goal is a good thing. If you were watching Arsenal beat Chelsea 1-0 last night in the Carabao Cup semi-final, second leg, Gary Neville on Sky going on and on about what a brilliant plan it was from Chelsea and how it's going to work any second now. Any second they're going to score a goal and Arsenal are going to be fucked. That's basically what he's saying. Yeah, just give it a minute. I'm convinced. Yep. Any time now Chelsea are going to score a goal. But weirdly, it turns out they didn't score a goal. Now, I'll admit I'm not an ex-player, an ex-England international. I haven't played at the highest level. But nor have I been beaten 7-0 by Barcelona as a manager. So I think we're probably even, me and Gary Neville. And I did not agree at all with his contention that what Chelsea were doing last night was in some way really brilliant and effective, when in fact it was the opposite. Because when it boils right down to it, Chelsea scored no goals in a game they needed to score in, and we scored one goal in a game we didn't need to score in. So who can say truly if Gary Neville was talking absolute bollocks or not? I can. He was. It was complete bollocks, and we'll get into all of that, I think, as we discuss this game. We discuss Arsenal reaching a final after probably a bit too much semi-final disappointment over the last number of years. We're there. We're going to be at Wembley next month. It remains to be seen who we're going to play. Manchester City have a 2-0 lead over Newcastle going into their second leg tonight, so it's probably going to be them. But, football is a strange thing. The important thing, though, is that we're there, and we did the job that we needed to do last night, and maybe Chelsea made it a bit easier for us than it might have been, but I'm not complaining. The important thing was that we got there. So why don't we talk about the game and talk about how it all went down? And with me to do that this morning is Lewis Ambrose. Good morning, Lewis.
Good morning, Andrew.
Feeling happy?
Feeling happy. I'm sure everybody's feeling happy this morning. With Chelsea are miserable. We're on our way to Wembley. What more do you want?
That's it. Maybe just if the sun could come out here, that would be nice. Haven't seen the sun for about 2 weeks, it feels like. So maybe I need to just sort of get some vitamin D tablets to offset that. But apart from that, I think we're all pretty happy, It's quite a funny game, this, to talk about, because there's been so much discussion of it and so much reaction of it, and what Chelsea did, what Chelsea didn't do, what Arsenal did. And, I've in the intro taken a slightly sardonic approach to the way that Chelsea came into this game, because, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, right? you could probably make a good case that, it's one goal, it's a cup semi-final, you're coming to the league leaders, a team that's, top of the Champions League table. You don't want to go all out from the very start. So you could say, keep it tight, nick a goal in the second half, get it to extra time. Maybe you score again in extra time, or you take it to penalties. And I can see that argument. I can see that sort of plan.
Anfield 89.
Well, exactly. I've seen people
Anfield
mention
89
that.
it.
Yeah,
right?
kind of. Keep it tight, 0-0 at half time, and then do what you need to do in the second leg. I sort of think, though, in cup football, you've got to go for it a little more than Chelsea did last night. I was watching that first half, and I was thinking, am I watching a tactical battle here? Or is this just a really dull, cagey half of football, which you could dress up as like, in a match report, maybe somewhere in The Guardian, somebody might say, and at halftime, it was an intriguing tactical battle, which means fuck all happened.
Yep.
How did you view the approach from Chelsea? Is it understandable, or is it in the context of a game that you need to score a goal in kind of a waste of a half of football?
I do understand it. I think, if we're Arsenal fans, Anfield 89 is such a central part to our history and our lore as a club. And I think if you look at it through that lens, I do get it. I think it's weird for us, maybe, because we're not used to teams, even though we've gotten better and better over the last few years. But if you go back to, we'll come on to how long it's been since we've played a final. And if you go back to the last time we played a final and the last time we played a final in this competition, we were kind of a punchline in many ways. Opposition teams, big clubs, did not respect us. And I thought that was what I saw from Chelsea. Respect that you cannot just turn up and put Arsenal under pressure and create chances and bully them. And I can definitely see the idea, see the logic behind, that the best way to get through is to make sure Arsenal don't get a goal and finish it. The other side of me thinks, well, don't die wondering. If you'd have come out the blocks and if you'd have really tried to put us under pressure, like Liam Rosenior talked about, the stadium maybe could feel nervy. It's like, well, make it feel nervy from the first minute then. Don't try and make the stadium nervous, the crowd nervous on Arsenal's backs. In the last 20 minutes thinking, oh, we could upset them now. It's like, well, you could have maybe put us under the cosh a lot earlier than that.
Yeah.
So, I think they didn't have a full team available. I think Palmer wasn't able to play much more than he played. Esteval had travelled to Brazil and back in the space of the last few days. So Neto failed a late fitness test. Reece James the same. So I guess there's an element of hands tied behind the back in terms of team selection as well. I can see why you would do it. And if it works brilliantly. And if it doesn't, then everyone goes, well, why the fuck do you waste an hour of football, like you said?
Yeah, it is contingent on it actually coming off, isn't it? Because you are playing a cautious game. You're taking by being conservative, you're sort of taking a risk as well at the same time, counterintuitively. What struck me last night, I don't know what your experience of watching the game on TV was, but we had Gary Neville on Sky Sports and he was constantly talking about what a great plan this was, and Chelsea were going to take it late and deep and the stadium would get nervous, and he was talking, you can hear the Arsenal fans around us, they're not really liking this, which didn't come across. I have to say, sometimes fine well when the Emirates Stadium is a bit nervous and the fans are a bit on edge. I don't think that was the case last night. So, this was, my impression of it all was informed by what I was receiving through the television as well. So I accept that. I acknowledge that. I just think, what really struck me was that if Mikel Arteta had done this, and maybe it's the grace that a new manager gets, right? He's new in the job. He's absolutely a new manager, a young manager. He's come into a big club and he's only there 3 or 4 weeks and he hasn't had the time that he would like, or maybe in a season or 2 seasons' time, his approach is a bit different. So you get that bit of grace. But you wouldn't be able to move for headlines and think pieces and reaction about how Arsenal and Mikel Arteta were super conservative and, risk averse and boring and all of this kind of stuff if we had gone to Stamford Bridge with the roles reversed and we had needed to score and played that way in the first half. I know it's not like for like exactly, but that's also what we've had to contend with quite a lot this season, is so much micro analysis of Arsenal as a football club, Mikel Arteta as a manager, every single performance, etc., that this felt like very slightly like a different kind of playing field, if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah, maybe it is just that sign of how far we've come and how we're looked at compared to a Chelsea now. Earlier this season, we went to the home of the champions and were slaughtered by the likes of Gary Neville from the second the lineup came in and Mikel Merino was in midfield alongside Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi. Like you say, we've contended with that this season, and similar to last night. Different to last night because we didn't need to win at Anfield that day. Gary Neville went on about you have to go and try and make a statement. And, well, the league table doesn't lie. I think we've made our statement over the course of the last 6 or 7 months in comparison to Liverpool. At the time he was going on about you have to make a statement, you have to show the intent to win. Similarly to last night, the game was tight, there weren't many chances, and there was one goal near the end of it. In that one, we didn't get any points. Last night, Chelsea actually had to win the game. And I think, like I say, I can understand the approach from Chelsea's perspective. I don't think it deserves loads and loads of credit. It didn't work, firstly. And secondly, it never even looked close to working. They didn't threaten at all. Kepa made one save of note, I felt, in the first half. Enzo Fernandez with an effort from just outside the box. We had a very similar shot, similar save from Sanchez, brought about by Hincapié, with an effort after a set piece that sort of the ball fell nicely on around the edge of the box again, and Hincapié hit. It was a very similar shot, very similar save, and that was all either goalkeeper really had to do for that and maybe claim a couple of crosses and try and defend a couple of corners for pretty much the entire game.
Yes.
And, if you turn up somewhere, we're a better team than Chelsea. We have better players than Chelsea. We're an older team than Chelsea. This team's had years to gel under this manager. So I think we were obviously the favourites going into last night, and any game plan of Rosenior's and Chelsea's was never going to change the fact that we were favourites and they were going to have to be spectacular, and we were going to have to play really, really far under our level. I think to lose at home or to lose by a couple of goals at home, but they didn't turn up like a team that actually I thought that believed they were going to turn it around. And I think when the manager's telling you let's get to 60, 70 minutes, not out of it. Maybe then it's hard to kind of go through the gears and turn it up in those last 20, 25 minutes.
Well, that was a thing that Neville kept talking about with regards to Arsenal, that, they've played like this. It's going to be very difficult for them to change it now. And it's like, well, does that not apply also to Chelsea, who, by the way... We
never needed to change it.
Well, that was my point.
A clean sheet and we're through.
That was exactly it. We didn't need to do anything. We didn't need to score. Yeah, it suited us. And listen... I accept issues of Chelsea having some players missing, but this is not like plucky underdog, low spending. They bought 100 players in the last couple of seasons. So I think that factors into things as well. But do you think Mikel Arteta would have been? I mean, I do. I think he would have been quite happy with the way Chelsea approached this game, because. If they were going to be risk averse, if they were going to be cautious until 60 minutes when they made a couple of changes, it was around 60 minutes when they made a couple of changes, right? Let me just look.
Just before
61 minutes, they brought on Palmer and Estevao and took Delap and Hato off. So that was clearly the plan. Give these guys half an hour to have a run at Arsenal. If I'm Mikel Arteta, I'm thinking, fine. yes, please. I'm all right with this.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, I'm not saying it's easy. And all jokes aside, I think you have to, maybe we'll talk about it in a bit more detail in a minute, you have to give Arsenal credit for the organisation, the discipline, the preparation. That was something Arteta talked about as well, because he talked about how they were prepared for what Chelsea were going to do, and obviously do in different stages of the games. He was speaking on Sky afterwards, I think, and he talked about having to play mini games within the game. So you've got the game, and then maybe to an hour, Chelsea are going to change it. And he talked about, well, yeah, after the last half an hour, and then the last 20 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes, because the dynamic changes. And he said, we prepared for all that. So I think you've got to give Arsenal, jokes aside, whatever you think about Chelsea's approach, you've got to give Arsenal credit for recognising what Chelsea were doing, adapting, controlling, not allowing them to do anything other than maybe have a couple of speculative efforts from distance. And, you know, that requires a level of organization and discipline and energy as well within a game that, you know, it might look like we didn't do a great deal, and we didn't do a great deal from an attacking perspective, which I think is another interesting aspect of this discussion. But, you know, there's a lot of effort required to sort of keep opposition like Chelsea at bay when they do eventually try and change the dynamic of the game, because they weren't able to.
Yeah, I mean, we are defensively. This team is. We know this. This team is formidable. This Arsenal side with Gabriel and Saliba, with Timber as a sort of one-on-one defender, winning his duels. It wasn't Calafiori last night. If you sort of have the first choice back four, but I thought Hincapié was excellent.
Yeah,
at left back. I thought, you know, the questions around Hincapié are probably more going forward and on the ball and having an impact in the final third. I think you really saw the benefit of having a natural centre back playing left back last night. You know, he's not a lumbering centre back. He's quick. He's wiry. He's incredibly tenacious, and I thought that was probably his best game so far for Arsenal. Defensively, definitely last night, and I think a tricky battle against the lap. Sort of having a striker put out there up against you, and big and brutish and physical, and then he went off and Esteval came on, and it was more of a tricky winger, and Hincapié stood up really, really well to both of those tests. We're really hard to score goals against, and I think Mikel Arteta can always lean on that. And I think, you know, if you want to talk about Chelsea's approach, our approach in cup football, well, you have to score against us to have any chance. And in the two goals, we dominated the game at Stamford Bridge. The two goals came from lapses, and would have been goals that Arsenal, that Arteta and the players would have been quite disappointed with, I think. And last night there were no lapses, there were no opportunities gifted by Arsenal. Chelsea, if they were going to do something, they were going to have to do something really, really, really clever, really spectacular, really intricate. And, you know, I think when you set the bar that high for what a team has to do to score against you, then you give yourself an incredible chance of keeping that clean sheet. I think to, you know, go back to your point about whether or not Mikel Arteta would have been happy with Chelsea's approach to that game. As you said that, my mind went back to, well, what would Mikel Arteta do in this situation? I think that's the answer to the question. Would he be happy? Well, we were in this situation in the Champions League semi-final last season, and we flew out of the blocks. We didn't get the result that we wanted, but we flew out of the blocks against PSG, and I think we really scared them in that first 15, 20 minutes at the Parc des Princes. A game in the exact same scenario, really. You're playing a top team, they're one goal up, they're at home. And I think we clearly, the last time we were in that situation back in May, we took the approach of, right, let's put them on the back foot immediately. Let's pin them back. Let's try and get the early goal and see if we can rattle them a little bit. We did rattle them. We didn't get the goal, but I think that answers whether or not Arteta would have done the same and whether or not he'd have been happy with Chelsea doing that. I think if we go back to that semi-final against PSG, I'm thinking, well, presumably he'd do the thing he'd least like to face in that situation. And he'd probably be pretty happy with Chelsea coming to the Emirates and, as you say, if you want to put it that way, wasting the first hour. Well, great, now we only have to keep a clean sheet for half an hour.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it, he did get booked, Mikel Arteta, on the sideline for what looked like at least a jovial kind of conversation with the fourth official, but who knows exactly what went on there. A smile on his face.
Sarcasm, I'm sure, whatever he was saying.
A smile on his face and daggers on his tongue, perhaps. But, there wasn't a great deal to this game in terms of entertainment and enjoyment. I mean, one of the things that also struck me about, and look, obviously it's a disgusting thing to even consider, but if I were a Chelsea fan this morning, beyond being knocked out by Arsenal and beyond seeing my team take a really cautious approach to this game, I would have also maybe looked at the Arsenal attack last night. I think the back four, keeper had little to do, but the back four and the two midfielders, Zubimendi and Rice, were excellent and really, really important. And the others did their work too, in that sense. But as an attacking force, there wasn't a great deal from Arsenal last night. Now, on the one hand, there didn't have to be, although a goal would have obviously been quite beneficial, would have calmed any nerves that were out there and made Chelsea's job a lot more difficult. But I would have looked at that front three and thought, it's not the greatest front three. I don't think we've maybe discussed it on our preview podcast a little bit, but it doesn't really work for me. I don't know that it really clicks. I think maybe with Madueke and Martinelli on one side, you probably need somebody like Jesus up front rather than Victor Gyökeres. And Eze came in, Martin Odegaard was not available, not fit. So Eze came in, that would be a source of regret for me as well, that if Arsenal had to step it up last night and if Arsenal had to really go at Chelsea and score a goal if Chelsea had scored and we needed to score another goal, I would have been, as a Chelsea fan, probably more confident in the ability to keep that front three out than other combinations Arsenal could have fielded last night.
Yeah, I guess do you need three centre-backs up against Victor Gyökeres? He doesn't get on the ball loads. He doesn't have loads of touches. He completed one pass last night. Do you need to have an extra centre-back to keep him more out of the game? Likewise, I think Martinelli, Madueke, players who, compared to Saka, compared to Trossard, they don't get as involved in the game. They don't keep the ball and kind of build pressure. So yeah, I think this was, if you look at the Arsenal lineup, I don't think Chelsea needed 5 defenders back there. No. Caicedo in front of them as well. Caicedo and Andre Santos in front of them as well. I think this is a game that maybe Rosenior looks back at and thinks, Enzo Fernandez could have played deeper in midfield next to Caicedo in this one. Or you could have played the back four. Arsenal did a couple of times nearly get through over the top.
That's what it was.
So it was from Gabriel Martinelli, but that looked like the only way that this front three was ever really likely to give Chelsea too many issues. There's not much. There's a lot happening at high speed with the three of them. There's a lot happening direct and in behind with Martinelli and Gyökeres especially. There's not much guile. There's not much kind of unlocking the door. So do you need a back five? Probably not.
No.
It's another one that I guess. It's Rosenior's very new to this level of the game. He's obviously had a good year and a bit with Strasbourg, but I think maybe that's one that if this game is played in a couple of years and he has a year or two under his belt as a manager at Premier League level and against teams like Arsenal and Manchester City and Liverpool, I wonder if maybe he'd have approached it differently. Yeah. And to touch on, like you say, that front three, I agree, it doesn't really work for me either. I think there's not quite. There are different ways, obviously, to set your team up, and it's hard to argue with the result because we didn't need to score a goal yesterday, and we never were threatened going the other way, really. But we've played this front three a few times. Forest away for the first half, Bournemouth away to start that game. it's never really done it for me either. And personally, I would definitely like to see more balance there. At least one player who's maybe a bit more likely to hold on to the ball and bring others into play. I think the three of them are all quite individualistic and quite direct. And, balancing it, like you say, with Jesus down the middle, especially when Ødegaard wasn't on the pitch as well, with Jesus through the middle or Trossard on the left, would have been a more balanced team for me. But, it worked.
It worked, and of course we're through to Wembley, which we'll talk about now in a few minutes' time. But there were changes from Arsenal as well after Chelsea made changes. He took Madueke and Gyökeres off and put Havertz and Trossard on. There's a bit more there, I think, in terms of the combination. Martinelli on the right, I think, is quite interesting over the last couple of days as well, like a different kind of an option on the right-hand side. We had a chance, I think it was a Gabriel header, wasn't it? It was a cross in. Gabriel headed it off Cucurella's face.
What a shame.
What a shame indeed. There was a free kick just outside our box, which I will admit to saying, I don't like this. I did not care for that particular moment, because it was just one of those where you could envisage all the ways that the ball might go in the back of the net. And I looked, they had an angle of it from behind the goal at one point. I was like, I don't like that wall. What's the story with that wall? I don't think I like that. And then Kepa's positioned in a way where I really didn't like the wall, but they didn't make the most of that particular opportunity. Do you think Arsenal should have had a penalty?
I think Arsenal could have had a penalty. I think it's, if the ref gives it, I think it probably stays given. And when the ref doesn't give it, as soon as you see the replay and there is a touch on the ball, then I think we know a touch on the ball often renders, in the eyes of the officials, the follow through, a trailing leg, kind of meaningless. If you get the ball first, you're allowed to kind of do whatever the hell you want afterwards.
Gyökeres at Newcastle, for example.
In the same challenge. Yeah, right. There's another one. So I think... I wonder if it would have been overturned if we'd have been given it in the first place. I was hoping for a penalty, and then as soon as I saw the replay, I thought I didn't think there was any way that VAR was going to say, come and have a look at this, where he gets the ball first, but then also clatters Gabriel Martinelli.
I think they're two separate movements for me. Like, he does get the ball, there's no question about that. But as the ball breaks into the box, which I think Martinelli, had he been upright, could have got to that ball, there's a separate movement from the defender, which hooks his legs. And for me, makes it a penalty. If we got away with that up the other end, I would be thanking my lucky stars, I have to say. I think that was... absolutely a stone cold penalty. 6 minutes of added time at the end, where I was like, where the hell did you get 6 minutes of added time? There hasn't been a goal. There's only been a couple of substitutions. There hasn't been any obvious time wasting or stoppages for injury. So it was like, well, they're really trying to create some drama here.
Yep.
But Chelsea, in that sort of final 5, 6, 7 minutes, were rendered kind of useless by Arsenal, because again, this I think comes back to the way that Arsenal defended. You can say it's poor from a Chelsea perspective that they didn't get the ball in the box, or that they, weren't just launching it in there into the mixer, because, when you get to 6 minutes of injury time and nothing's worked, there really is only one other way to do it, isn't there? Like, if nothing's working, it's just like, stick the big lads up front, which they did. They stuck a couple of defenders up front, I think, to give them some presence in the Arsenal box, but singularly failed to get the ball into the box. I mean, is that a failure of Chelsea, or do you credit Arsenal for, being defensively disciplined and keeping a good shape, not allowing them the angles to get those crosses in?
I think... We did shut, considering we've been playing on a heavy pitch, horrible weather, and the pitch took a pounding on Sunday night as well when the women's team played there with the torrential rain. Doesn't
look great at the moment, does it? The pitch, it's not what you...
I think it's not stopped raining in N5 for a little while, and as I say, for anyone who watched the women's game on Sunday night, it was torrential throughout. 120 minutes of players running all over the pitch. The ground staff have then had a couple of days to turn it around. Not even a couple of days. They've just had Monday to kind of keep it alive and try and get a lot of that water off of it in time for last night's game. And then the rains kept coming down and kept coming down. I think that does something to the legs as well. You're running in that heavy. It's not like playing, all of us playing Sunday League down the park. It's obviously not quite the same as that.
But quite Hackney Marshes.
We know the difference. The wet ground, it's heavier. It takes a little bit more to kick the ball and complete your passes and get the pace you want on it. And every step just takes a little bit more out of you than on a dry pitch on a nice sunny day. So, I think it was considering that as well, and as you touched on earlier, the mental effort required to concentrate and defend that brilliantly, that resiliently for so long. That we continued to do a brilliant job. Shutting them down in wide areas. We didn't really allow them any time on the ball in our half. We were really disciplined in our shape. Martinelli getting back and basically playing as a right back at times in those last few minutes. I know he can blow hot and cold, and there are, I think, very widely varying opinions on Gabriel Martinelli, but he will never not put in the most incredible shift when required. And I think that's part of the reason Mikel Arteta trusts him so much in the biggest games and loves using him in the biggest games. I thought we were good. I think Chelsea could have done more to work a bit of space and whip a ball in and maybe cause a little bit more chaos. You never know when you whip a ball into the box. All it takes is a deflection, or the goalkeeper rushes out for one that he can't actually come and claim and can't reach. And I think Chelsea will be really disappointed if they didn't ask a few more of those questions. But any questions they did ask, I think we limited them as much as you could possibly hope. And yeah, it was, they didn't really swing the ball in. And you wonder, you look at this Arsenal side compared to years gone by, and if you're looking to swing the ball in and you look up and it's Gabriel and Saliba and Hincapié and Rice in there, does that kind of put you off as well? You go, do I want to swing it in to João Pedro when he's sort of surrounded by these guys?
Sure.
Maybe not. So it's weird. It's weird looking at this game and thinking back 10, 15 years. This is the exact kind of way that we would feebly lose at Stamford Bridge in the final 10 minutes needing a goal. And just sort of that role reversal and what we've become, this defensive monster of a team is really strange. I also liked, you mentioned the balance up front with the front three and the subs, and bringing on Havertz and Trossard, and that did give us a little bit more as well of the ball, I thought, compared to maybe the 10 minutes beforehand. Over the course of the evening, Gyökeres completed one pass. Havertz came on, and it's not loads, but in his half an hour completed 6. I think Madueke, similar, completed 7 or 8 passes. Trossard came on and completed 7 in less than half the time. And I think that's, when you're looking to see a game out, it's great having the defensive solidity that we have, and those big men in the box heading things out, and Martinelli running around closing crosses down. But to have a couple of extra players on the pitch who might put their foot on the ball and keep it a bit more simple and hold it up and complete a couple of passes as well, I think that makes a big difference.
Yes.
Every few passes you can complete like that is 30 seconds where you don't have to defend and concentrate and track your man and head something away. So
exactly, and if the ball's up the other end of the pitch, they can't score from there. If you have Trossard holding it up in the corners as he did, we get to then the last few minutes where Chelsea are huffing and puffing and absolutely failing to blow the house down. I'm sure people will at this point have seen the incredible fail video posted by former Chelsea captain John Terry as he recorded himself going, "Come on, boys, you can get a goal." I don't know if he was doing it live, but it's just so weird. It didn't. He actually recorded that and then uploaded it to TikTok or whatever. And listen, if we had finished that game 0-0 and it had been an absolute grind, I wouldn't complain, because the job was get to Wembley, deal with a semi-final, and make sure you're in the final and you have a chance for silverware. So I would not have complained. But the coupling of what happened with that kind of John Terry video where he sort of, go, come on, we're going to do it. And for him to not either understand the offside rule or be too busy filming his own mug that he didn't notice how onside Havertz was in that moment was just glorious. And I think that goal, you know, it was a grind. It wasn't the most enjoyable game you'll ever see. But that moment in the 96th, 97th minute just sort of was kind of just what we needed or just what we wanted. It was a bit of icing on the cake. The cake was already served up. You know, we were going through. But this was the icing. Cucurella plays a nothing ball forward. It's a really poor, lofted pass to someone, maybe Estevao over on the other side. Nketiah reads it, heads it down. Trossard plays it down the line to Declan Rice. This is a brilliant, brilliant pass from Declan Rice.
Yeah.
And we're also, by the way...
On his left foot.
On his left foot. In the 97th minute of a game where we've, you know, and he, by the way, I thought was excellent defensively as well. But all of a sudden, he's free on the halfway line. He's breaking forward, taking that opportunity to get forward when he could have stood there and kept his position. No, you know, he said, I saw the interview with him on CBS afterwards. He said he was shattered. Which I understand because, like you say, heavy pitch.
He didn't have the legs to run into the corner or anything.
Well, listen,
like, Jesus, get this ball to someone else, so it's not my responsibility anymore.
Well, listen, it's a great pass. It really is a great pass on his left foot into Havertz, who's got Martinelli in support. I really like that Havertz took this on. Like that's a guy. That's a guy who's missed a lot of football and has decided now that he's back. You know, he's gonna be really decisive in those moments. You know, it's not the first time he scored against Chelsea, by the way, in an Arsenal shirt. He likes a goal against Chelsea. He
always. You can see on his face that he really likes a goal against Chelsea as well. He doesn't just have a knack of scoring against Chelsea, but he really enjoys it.
Mm-hmm. He really does, and he really did. But it's a very well taken goal, isn't it? It's just cool, calm, collected around the goalkeeper, rolls it in, pandemonium. You know, the game is absolutely 100% secure. But also, I think, you know, to endure, which I think is a not unreasonable way of talking about the previous 96 minutes, to endure those 96 minutes, but then to have that moment at the end to sort of crown your pathway to Wembley, I think is just really nice.
Yeah, it is. I think, look, like you said, 0-0, we'd have all been happy with a 0-0, but it's nice to have that moment of, you know, the shoulders come down, you know it's done, it's sealed, and you get a moment to celebrate as well. Celebrate a goal, see the ball hit the back of the net. And I think you know, this next few months until the end of the season, I think Kai Havertz hopefully could be huge for Arsenal. I think we've really, really missed him. And as you said, it felt like a player. I wondered, you know, as the ball arrives with him, you see Martinelli there, what's he going to do? Is he going to wait for Sanchez and lay it off? That looked like, excuse me, that looked like a player who has missed scoring goals and is really determined to have an impact and get on the end of things and score goals. I think you don't often see big emotions from Kai Havertz, you know, when he scores. I think lots of players will go mad. Kai Havertz is usually sort of a jog into the corner and a bit of a grin. I thought, considering how much the game actually meant, the celebration against Kairat already felt like a big sort of release from him. It must be a huge weight off your shoulders, you know, after so long back. I think you can return to playing again, but you probably don't really feel like you're actually back and actually helping the team the way that you want to until you're having a bit of an actual impact that you can see and feel. And for an attacking player, that means goals. And yeah, he took it brilliantly. A player who, as a centre forward, the biggest criticism probably has been his ability to finish moves off when he gets in front of goal. I think Kai Havertz, you can't question the work rate, the ability to hold the ball up and bring others into play, the movement. The question, if there's been a question, has often been, right, but when a chance falls to him in the box, is he going to finish it? And here we are. He's up front for 25 minutes, 30 minutes with the added time nearly. He gets one chance and he takes it absolutely brilliantly. Is a weight off his shoulders, and I think hopefully a sign of things to come, because if Kai Havertz can stay fit and play regularly up front, then it adds something that we've definitely been missing over the past few months.
Yeah, that is for sure. I mean, it's a couple of goals and an assist in the few games that he has been back so far. So, there is
a lot of football this week too.
Well, yeah, as well.
Taking it slow with him over the past month after he came on against Portsmouth, and he looked quite tidy that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think last week we were talking about how is he really fit? Is he ready to play? And then suddenly in the space of a week now he's played sort of a game and a half's worth of football. A huge boost.
I mean, you could forgive a guy who's been out for that length of time for taking a while to get back to, well, I think he probably is still trying to get back up to speed and proper match fitness and all of those things. But in the meantime, to be actually producing goals and assists and impacting games in the way that he is a very positive thing, right?
Yeah. And in light of the Mikel Merino injury, I think if Merino was injured, was available still, you're maybe talking about Havertz still having a bit more time to ease himself in. You've got Gyökeres and Jesus up front. You've got Merino and Rice and Ødegaard and Eze in midfield. Now, well, we don't have Merino. Ødegaard has a little niggle that kept him out the game last night, and we don't know what that's going to look like. Mm-hmm. We've got a midweek game after midweek game after midweek game, on top of all the busy weekends. There are a lot of minutes they're going to have to be shared, and with Merino out, with Ødegaard carrying something, there's every chance that Havertz is back involved again at the weekend, and it'll be 4 games in the space of 10 days for him. So it's important that he's not just fit and available, but actually, like you say, ready to have an impact.
So obviously reaching the final is the aim when you get to this stage of a competition. You've got to get there. You've got to get yourselves over the line. And we've done that. So, congratulations to the team and to the manager. But I think as well, it goes a little bit beyond this season, a bit beyond beating Chelsea. You always want to beat Chelsea. Because in the past, we have had some semi-final disappointments. I think we're always looking to see, where this team is making progress. Are we doing better than we did before? So I think there's maybe a little psychological aspect to this game as well, or to these 2 games against Chelsea, where, the ambition is obvious when you get to a semi-final, it's to get to the final. But there was some baggage that came with being in a semi-final again, and hopefully it is part of the progress that we see result in tangible things. But would have been another big question mark, wouldn't it, had we not come through these 2 ties as well as we did? Yeah,
we've been knocked out of the cups over the past few years almost every time we've faced one of the other top teams in England. Liverpool in this competition and the FA Cup, Man City in the FA Cup, Manchester United in the FA Cup. Newcastle last year, maybe not quite the weight of some of those names, but a team that finished in the top 4 last season and won this trophy. We've sort of fallen at that hurdle in the Champions League against Bayern and PSG. It feels like when we've played the really top teams, Real Madrid accepted maybe last year, in the cup competitions, we've not found a way, whether it's been tight or in the case of Newcastle last season, not tight, we've just not found a way to get through. And as a fan, I'm sure for the players, I'm sure for Mikel Arteta, it plays on your mind a little bit that you've not got there. We, as Arsenal fans, we've been incredibly fortunate the number of finals we've seen our team in. The number of trophies we've seen our team win. Mm-hmm. But I think even when it wasn't the way everyone wanted it to be at times under Arsene Wenger, there were still finals, there were still semi-finals, there were still finals, there were still cups along the way. After a bit of a wait for one. and it's been a really long time now. 6 years since the final, 8 since the final with any. Well, I mean, we played one in Baku. 8 since the final at Wembley, and a final that really many fans could attend.
Yeah, of course. 2020, there were no fans.
2020, there were no fans.
Yeah.
Baku, the year before, there were
few fans because
because it was in Azerbaijan and hardly anyone could get there, and it cost an arm and a leg and weeks and weeks of time of travelling, enough work and everything. Hardly anyone could make it all the way to Baku. Nobody could get to Wembley 6 years ago. It's 8 years. It's 8 years since Arsenal played a final, and half the stadium was there, decked out in red and white, ready to watch Arsenal compete for a trophy over the course of 90 minutes. That's considering the journey we've been on with Mikel Arteta over the last 6 years, and we've come really close to achieving really, really big things. These cups mean a lot to us still. The FA Cup obviously more, but this one too. When you get to this stage, it's a trophy, and it's a day at Wembley where you get to see your team compete for a trophy and hopefully lift a trophy. And I think the players, more than anything, the players need it. The players need that albatross around the neck that needs to be gotten rid of. All this brilliant football at times, maybe not so much this season. All this brilliant defensive work, all the points that we've gathered in the Premier League over the past few years. At the end of the day, nobody's got a medal. There's nothing to show for it. William Saliba's not played in a final for Arsenal. Gabriel hasn't played in a final for Arsenal. Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, none of these players, not a single one of them. I think Saka was the only player at the club who was in the squad when we played Chelsea in the final, in the FA Cup final.
He was on the bench.
He didn't get off the bench.
Yeah.
If you look at the lineup from the final in this competition 8 years ago, when we last made the final of this competition against Man City, who will probably play in this one, it's hard to believe that just 8 years ago that was an Arsenal 11. This is about time. It's long overdue that these players get the chance to play in a final and have earned the chance to play in a final for Arsenal, and to have a day to celebrate, because we've had a lot of wins over the last few years. We've picked up a hell of a lot of points. We've scored a lot of goals, and there's been loads of clean sheets. But as fans with this team, we've not had a day to celebrate a piece of silverware. And now finally again we have the opportunity to do that.
I think it is big from that perspective as well, because it was something Arteta was asked about in the pre-game press conference, was that obviously winning the FA Cup in 2020 was great, but that was not the world we thought it would be. At that point, the world was a very different place. And like you say, there were only a few journalists allowed in. There were no fans allowed in. It's a very different experience, isn't it? There is something, when you win a trophy, there's something so communal about it, that you're celebrating with the other fans around you. You can feel that connection between the fans and the team, the trophy lift, all of that kind of stuff, which I've been...
A half full Wembley,
exactly,
as loud as it was when it was full.
Exactly,
with everybody having a great hour or so.
I've been there, and I've been very lucky to be there to see Arsenal lift some FA Cups at Wembley, and it's an amazing thing to experience as a fan. But it's also, I'm sure, an amazing thing for the players to experience with the fans. And I think there is something there in what you're saying about the connections that we have, or the connection that we have with this team. It hasn't manifested itself in that moment, that experience that, I think they've worked very hard to try and achieve, but have come a little bit too short in a couple of competitions in recent years. But that sense, which is part of how we all feel about this season, is that we want them to succeed, and we want them to win, and we want to see them lift trophies, because that's what it's all about. That's what football's all about, winning things and winning trophies and all that. But there is something a bit more than that as well. Like, it feels like that moment, that occasion that really solidifies that connection between player and fans is overdue, right?
Absolutely. And let's not let's not go crazy. Like, this isn't the moment that we're waiting for. The 22nd of March cannot deliver the moment of salvation that we've all been waiting for. It cannot satisfy us this season. It will not satisfy the players. Absolutely not. There's no doubt about that. Nobody is going to be playing the League Cup final and hopefully win the League Cup final and think, right, job done. It has to kick on to something else. And we're all aware of that. They're all aware of that. But to have a day where we get the opportunity to just celebrate, not worry about what the other score was, or is the goal difference enough? And all of that. And we're 1-0 up and there's 15 minutes to go, and we get over the line, but it's like, oh Jesus, if we play like that next week. No, there will be no if we play like that next week. If we get over the line like we did last night, or like we have in some of the league games this season, it'll be right now we've got a trophy in our hands and now we all get to have a party. It's not the moment that we're all waiting for, but it's a moment. And these things we've waited. I'm certainly one of those fans that the League Cup, in the earlier rounds, I can very happily leave it. I very happily watch watch a lot of the younger players play. I was raised on the Arsene Wenger era and seeing Sanchez Watt and Jay Simpson get a run out in the League Cup and Carlos Vela chipping Sheffield United goalkeepers and Jack Wilshere coming on and exciting everybody. That's the League Cup kind of, to me, in my head still. But when you get to Wembley and you get the chance to win something, I think it's 6 years waiting for a trophy. As I say, 8 years with a final with a lot of Arsenal fans there, 9 since we won a final with a lot of Arsenal fans there. Nothing at Wembley and with a trophy on the line at this stage can be taken for granted.
No.
And we've reached that point where this team, we know this team has been great, but if this team doesn't start winning things, it will never be considered great, and they won't be remembered. We've now got a great opportunity to win this one. Declan Rice did an interview with Sky Sports recently before the first leg. I think it was before the league game that was before the first leg. He sat down in one of these sort of big interviews they do pre-match, and I think it was with Jamie Redknapp, and he talked about this competition, how excited everyone is, and he talked about talking to Raheem Sterling last season when he was at the club, and Sterling talking about Man City winning 3 or 4 of these, I think, in a row, and saying that lifting that trophy in February back then, the finals in March this time around, but lifting that trophy in February and then multiple times going on to win the league, that it gave them something. It gave them a little kick for that run-in for the last couple of months of the season. And I think, if Raheem Sterling's been in that dressing room last year telling players that, then these players will feel that as well. These players, obviously, I think, as fans, certainly, when we talk about the nerves that have been in the stadium at times this season, the frustration, the disappointment that we've maybe not been a bit more convincing and clinical and dominant at times, it's all attached to the fact that we've been good but we haven't got over the line. And I think this is not to be underestimated, that if the players go out there and win this one, then that will give them the feeling too, okay, we're on to something, we are getting over the line. Yeah. We are making progress. And I think you saw that in the way they celebrated last night. The team that Arteta picked, again, and then the way that the players celebrated, they really, really want this. And whether it's important or not psychologically, if they believe it's important, it becomes important.
Well, that was always my contention when people, you get to the business end of this competition and people are like, fuck it, focus on the Premier League, which I understand. That's the one we all want. But I think for these players who have come close, there is huge benefit if they can win this final to sort of going, right, at last, we've won something. It's not the only thing we want to win. It's not the biggest thing we want to win. We're now super focused on winning the Premier League, or who knows, the Champions League, or maybe both, let's get greedy here. But, that is the way that they will see it. But you can't tell me, you cannot convince me that there will not be a benefit to these players and the manager, and maybe even the fans as well, in terms of our belief in what this team can do in the final part of the season if we've got a trophy under our belts after so long. Arteta said, I think after the game, the best vitamins we can have are the ones that take us to the final, something like that, right? Because, there's a lot of effort gone into it, but that sense of losing legs are tired legs, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you win...
And minds.
Absolutely. So there's huge benefit to doing what we did in these 2 legs against Chelsea. And hopefully, it will be a great day out at Wembley for everybody who's going to be lucky enough to be there. And these players can lift that trophy and have that moment and then, kick on and see what we can do in the rest of the season. So, listen, I think we've pretty much covered everything there, to be honest. The question is, how will that impact what we do at the weekend against Sunderland? It's Wednesday, but we've got a couple of days to think about that, and we'll record our preview podcast over on Patreon as we normally do on a Friday and look ahead to that game against Sunderland on Saturday. For now, though, Lewis, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers, Andrew. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed to Lewis. You can find him on Blue Sky. He is at lgambrose.bsky.social, at lgambrose.bsky.social. And Lewis, of course, as I said, is the co-host on our Premier League preview podcasts, which we do every weekend for all of our Premier League games and also all the other big games in the Cups and the Champions League, etc., as well. So you can join myself and Lewis on Friday to talk about Sunderland at home. That's what's next for this Arsenal team as we park Wembley, just put it to one side for the time being. We'll return to that, of course, in due course, but there's a lot more to do in the Premier League, starting this weekend with Sunderland at home. And you can join us on Patreon for that, patreon.com/Arseblog. Right, I'm going to leave it there. Get this podcast out to everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for enduring that first half of the show where we didn't do anything. In the end, though, I think it turned out all right. So again, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye. Hi, Diernan. Yeah, great. Listen, thanks for taking the call. No, they're fine. No, they're better than fine. The family's great. And how's everything at your end? Great. Listen, glad to hear it. I was just ringing to get in touch about, Webbapalooza and, the talk we're supposed to be going to. Like, all the big CEO guys are going to be there. Yeah, it's going to be great. But listen, have you heard about this guy? Like, I'm hearing through the back channels that this new philosophy he's got about not doing anything at all is really making waves in the business. You know what I mean? Great. Yeah. I was just wondering, if maybe that was something we could implement ourselves, take a bit of the hassle out of the day, you know what I'm saying? Oh, great. So I was just wondering, if maybe we could sit down over a flat white and just sort of tease that out a bit, see if that's something that we could put in place for ourselves, By the way, Diernan, was that yourself in the files that you dare not mention, you know what I mean? Hello, Diernan? You there? Diernan? Well, looks like he's hung up. Great.